Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this Royal Television Society Futures session. We're focusing today on the life of a reporter and a presenter. I'm Jasmine Dotiwala. I'm Head of Youth Engagement at Media Trust, as well as being a multimedia broadcaster on television and radio across Channel 4, the BBC and Sky. Today's session, as you know, is going to run for an hour. I'm happy to stay a little bit longer, but I know that a couple of our presenters have to go on the dot of 3 p.m. So do try and get your questions into the chat box, and we'll try and squeeze in as many as possible. So today, as you know, we're focusing on presenters who are also reporters. They're responsible for delivering updates and analysis on current stories. Obviously, their main goal is to report on the news and keep the public updated through different channels like radio and television. The primary focus between a reporter and a presenter, because a few of you asked me this on Twitter, is that the term reporter is commonly used to refer to someone on television or radio, someone who reports on news and documentaries, whereas the term journalist is typically used in context of print journalism and someone who writes articles. So that's the main difference for those of you who are asking. Some of the special qualities that presenters stroke reporters have, and our four panel stars today have in abundance, are having a nose for news and stories, being curious, being alert, being impartial as well as trustworthy. So let's meet them all. Anita Rani is a TV and radio presenter who's originally from Bradford, West Yorkshire. She's presented everything from The One Show, Watchdog, Bake Off, Country File, and also taken a turn on Strictly Come Dancing. She's currently hosting a new show about Britain's best parent on Channel 4 that has got Twitter quite rampant. So I'm loving that, Anita. Welcome. Jackie is a social affairs editor and presenter for Channel 4 News. She joined the programme in 2011, following more than 2 decades at the BBC. She was also a correspondent at Newsnight, and she's also worked on The World at 1 and 5 Live. And I'm so proud to know her and call her one of my colleagues at Channel 4 News. Welcome, Jackie. Anna O Neill studied at the University of Salford. She's now a radio reporter at BBC London. She's been there since 2001. She's also a reporter for BBC News on BBC One, as well as reporting for Witness on BBC World Service and BBC Arabic's Extra programme, as well as reporting for radios 2, 3, 5 Live and across BBC local radio stations. And I'm proud to call her a colleague at BBC Radio London too. And Ade Adepitan is a TV presenter and Paralympian wheelchair basketball player born in Nigeria who emigrated to the UK aged 3 as a wheelchair basketball player. He's also been a part of Team GB's Summer Paralympics in Athens. He's also been a part of the team that won the gold medal at the 2005 Paralympic World Cup in Manchester. He is also, of course, presenter of a variety of TV programmes from CBBC, the BBC and Channel 4, from The One Show to Unreported World, and of course the unforgettable series Africa with Ade Adepitan. So welcome, and a huge thanks to our whole panel today. To start off with, I wanted to get a quick roundup from you all about what life has been like for each of you on lockdown during COVID. Are you all managing to work from home? And if so, what's it been like? Shall we kick off with you, Jackie?
Well, we have, because most of the time I report actually, which means getting out, you have to get out, you have to talk to people on the ground. So we have been operating, I won't say as normal, because there have been many challenges, shall I say, with how we're working at the moment. But most of the time, I've still been travelling. I've still been going out and about. We're working with very long microphones. We're trying where we can to adhere to social distancing. Working from home, which I occasionally do, for me is an absolute nightmare. I have 5 kids at home, 2 dogs and a cat. I haven't been to the toilet on my own in 15 years. And the whole thing is so stressful. I would rather be at work, to be perfectly frank, as much as I love them. It's just impossible to try and balance actually getting something done. So it's been a challenge.
And Anna and Anita, were you going to jump in?
Yeah, I can do. I was actually just going to jump in to say I'm in awe of Jackie. 5 kids, 2 dogs, and a powerhouse of a journalist. Like, oh, more power to you, Jackie. I mean, I guess like everybody, you know, we have to adapt, and that's, I guess, the brilliance of humans, that we can adapt. I had about 3 big projects lined up that were ready to go. I was meant to be sailing down the Ganges in India, like a project I've been waiting for my entire life. And I had to unpack my suitcase and just sit at home, which has really kind of at the beginning panicked me because I'm so used to being on the road, whether I'm filming abroad or filming Country File or the One Show. You're constantly out of the house and somewhere, you know, talking to people face to face. But I just had to get used to it. Thankfully, Country File is seen as essential viewing, so they just had to rework the way we film. So really pared down crew, me and a cameraman. And they decided to shoot in locations that were really close to where the presenters live rather than us having to travel. So the first Country File filmed like that was, I was the guinea pig. So it was Country File in Hackney, which is probably the least glamorous location Country File has ever been to, in my back garden. But, you know, we got on with it. And actually, it felt really important to make a programme at the beginning of lockdown to see how my area was coping. And I was just kind of cycling around, meeting people and understanding the impact it's had. So yeah, kind of work's picking up again, but you know, it's been strange, but it's been okay. And I've quite liked being at home, I must say. I'm not going to lie, the weather has helped.
So for me, well, originally I was fully prepared to carry on working as normal, and then at the start of the coronavirus outbreak, there was talk about certain people that were going to be more affected than others, and my son has chronic asthma. So I took a decision that I would have to work from home, but it's made me have to rethink the way I work. So I'm still reporting on drive time, on Ade Adepitan's drive time every day. And I'm doing that basically from home. So I'm doing what would be the Studio 2 way, I guess, but it's from my from the sofa behind me. But I've also adapted. So I've come up with a little idea that's been working really, really well for the past 11 or 12 weeks, which is on the show before drive time, which is called Tea at 3. What happens is all my neighbours at the beginning of lockdown decided that at 3 o'clock every day we would go out into our front gardens and have a cup of tea and wave to each other and say hello to try to keep the community connected. It's grown into a really big thing. Everybody now comes out at 3 o'clock. We've managed to discuss like some of the really burning issues of the day. We've had TikTok stars come along. We've had actors and actresses come along. We've had music. It's just grown into like more than I could have ever imagined. I thought it was going to be a one-day thing at 3 o'clock, but no, it's been going on for like 12 weeks now. So yeah, I've just adapted, but it's also forced me to...
That sounds like a lot of fun.
It's a lot of fun, but actually it's essentially what local radio journalists are really good at, or should be really good at. You need to be able to find stories wherever you are. And actually there's been a wealth of stories in my own road and the surrounding roads that I've been able to tap into. And people are now coming forward to me all the time with new stuff and new suggestions and things that they would like me to highlight. So it's just been a little microcosm of what I normally do, but in a very small space.
Absolutely. Learning to work differently. Ade, what about you?
Oh, first of all, I just want to say big respect to Jackie, just like Anita said, with the 5 kids. I heard a comedian on Radio 4 the other day saying that him and his wife who don't have kids really enjoy saying hi and sort of getting to know their neighbours over the fence. But their neighbours have got a load of kids, and he said what they really enjoy more than saying hi to them is gradually over the lockdown watching them slowly lose their minds, but with having the kids at home for that period of time. So I'm hoping you're not losing.
They're not my neighbours, are they?
I hope you're not losing your mind, Jackie, and hope there's not someone documenting that situation either. So in terms of myself with the lockdown, I agree with Anita and the rest of you guys. It's about adapting. I was in an odd situation. I was in the middle of filming a documentary series about climate change. So I'd literally just got back from Bangladesh and Bhutan. There was about 2 weeks breathing space before I was due to go off to Alaska to film the next bit. We'd heard rumblings of Corona and COVID, and potential restriction of flights and lockdowns whilst we were out in Bangladesh. I mean, we were supposed to go to China, and we were trying to move that because China had already locked down, and we were trying to move that further down the road, and we were hoping and praying that there wouldn't be a full lockdown. But then, even weirder, I got symptoms the week before we were due to go to Alaska. I was feeling awful, absolutely awful. I had the cough, high temperature, the loss of smell, loss of taste. But my wife was like going bonkers because everything she cooked for me, I just said I couldn't taste it and all of that stuff. And so actually for me, it came at a good time because I don't think I would have been able to cope with Alaska. And there was almost a mass scramble actually at work because people knew the lockdown was coming on, and they were thinking, if we could get out to Alaska before the lockdown happened, maybe we could get this section of the documentary filmed before it all kicked off. But fortunately for us, we didn't go, because I think what would have ended up happening is we would have gone to Alaska. No one would have wanted to have anything to do with us because we came from Europe, which was having the highest rates of coronavirus. And we probably would have been stuck in America listening to Donald Trump. So no, I think we escaped really well. And then also with my work, a lot of my work is based on traveling. I do the travel show for BBC World News. I also do various other documentaries which are based on traveling around the world. They all just disappeared. So my diary basically emptied, and I actually enjoyed the breathing space, the time of being at home, spending time with family. We've got a really nice park next to us, and it's given me a chance to contemplate. But then I got restless again, and I've started doing loads of live streams, or I have been doing loads of live streams. Like everyone suddenly is just doing live streams now, aren't they? It's just like there's 20 million live streams about how you do your toenails, how you bake food, and it's mental. You know, everyone is a broadcaster now. A friend of mine said this would happen. He said 30 years ago, he said, TV and broadcasting is going to move from being on your actual TV to everybody doing it at home once the capabilities happen. And I think one of the things that's happened from the unintended consequence, or would you say, from coronavirus, is now everyone's broadcasting from home.
Absolutely. And we have over 100 people on this broadcast live stream listening to us now, hoping to do the same and following in your footsteps. So the reason you four are here today, unlike most desk-based presenters in studios, you can all flip pretty seamlessly between studios and outside broadcasts, and you do all make it look really easy. So I wanted to ask you why your job as both a studio-based reporter and presenter is more satisfying than just being studio-based. How much more different, and what do you gain? What kind of satisfaction do you gain from being out on the road? And Anita, if we could start with you.
Oh gosh, well, I mean, I love both aspects of the job, really different, but I think it is really good if you can have both skills. If you can do a studio broadcast, a live studio broadcast, well, I'm sure Jackie and I will talk about that as well, but that is a very specific, certain type of skill where you need to have something in your ear, an earpiece to directors, be able to take instruction, know about timings because it's live, be able to think on your feet if anything goes wrong, and the adrenaline that you get from doing live broadcasts. I guess two of the biggest I've done are both royal weddings. I mean, the intense pressure on that day, on both those days, was incredible. And I love it. I absolutely love the buzz of live studio or live TV. But in terms of other types of telly, being on the road, being with a camera crew, that I adore it. I adore it. And I guess the thrill of that is, and the way you work, is that you never do the same thing twice. Okay, so for instance, I work on the One Show. Ade's done the One Show. We've both kind of hosted it, and it is such a great job, right? You're broadcasting live to the nation. You get hair, makeup. Well, you used to pre-COVID, but it's the same every day, right? You're going to the office, you're going there, but when you're on the road, it's never the same day twice, and it's a quite an intense way of working. And I know Ade will back me up and have probably lots more to say. But you meet the crew, and like if you're going off to do a documentary, you get a certain crew, and you just have to rely on the fact that everybody knows their job really well, and that for the next however many weeks you're on the road, you're just going to get on with it, and you just have to get on with each other somehow as well. And so it takes a certain type of personality. You have to be you really need to be able to get out of bed in the morning. If you don't want to get out of bed in the morning, I don't recommend this is not a job for you. Like if you're filming and you're filming at sunrise and you film till sunset and sometimes beyond, and then you have to hit the road to get onto the next location. These are just the realities of filming. But it is such an amazing feeling of camaraderie and that sense of we are here to make something happen, to create a project, and the people you get to meet, depending on the type of program you're making, and the access to the worlds that you get, that you would never get in any other way, is fantastic. And then there's just the privilege of talking to people about their lives. It's very, very enriching personally. And then when people watch your programs and take something away from them, then all the boxes are ticked. Can you tell I love my job? Can you tell I love my job?
Yes, you definitely love it. Jackie, Anna, Ade?
Well, just for me, my life is far less glamorous than Anita's, and I'm much more likely to be in Hull than anywhere else. But nevertheless, she is right about one thing: the absolute privilege of going into people's homes and hearing their story. I have never lost. I'm way older than most of you. I started reporting in the Victorian days, as the kids say, when I talk about when I started. And I remember I started in local papers, and I remember the first thing that I was doing was going to cover golden weddings. And you would go and talk to an old couple, an elderly couple, I should say, about how they'd managed to stay married for 50 years. The secret is never going to bed on an argument, just if anyone wants to know. But you would go into these people's houses and they always had an incredible story to tell. They would tell you a story about how they met during the war or how they lost contact with each other. And there was always an incredible story to tell. And just even those small, seemingly mundane things, I genuinely, from that moment on, thought it was an absolute privilege. When I went to the World at One, and there was still ongoing trouble in Northern Ireland, you were going into people's houses on both sides of the divide, as the cliche goes, and you were hearing about bereavement, about involvement in terrorism in some instances, about the impact of that on families. It's never left me. And when Anita says about getting up in the morning, there are some days you get up and you think, do I really want to go to Grimsby? The minute I'm in someone's house and they're talking to me, I just think, bingo, this is it. And so for me, I came to presenting relatively late. I've only been presenting since I came to Channel 4. I was always a reporter, World at One and PM on the radio, and then Newsnight. And presenting, we may talk about it later. I mean, I was absolutely terrified and very, very nervous. But the fact that you get to do both seems to me as a journalist to be really important, because I still get out to go to the people who are most important, and that's those people on the ground who are telling you the story. And that's why I think Channel 4 is a particular type of news, because all the presenters still report. And for me personally, I think that's really, really important.
Absolutely.
I mean, for me, I think reporting it runs through my veins. It's in my DNA. And I think I work, most of my time I work in radio. So I don't have a crew with me. I'm on my own usually. And to do that, you need to be somebody who's pretty confident, that likes listening to people, that likes talking to people, that doesn't mind going into any situation and getting in there and finding out who the best person to talk to is. You have to be what they call on people's CVs as a self-starter. You have to be able to go when they say to you, right, go quickly, go and find me someone that can do this. Go and find someone. You have to be able to be that person that can go into any community and knock on a few doors and say, hey, could you help me? I'm from BBC. I would love to speak to you about this, that, or the other. And sometimes it's not easy. It can be a lonely job when you're standing out in the pouring rain, in the dark, on a street corner, wishing you had a guest to interview. It can be a lonely place to be in, but most of the time it is the best job in the world. I've seen some of the most, you know, I've had some of the most wonderful experiences. I've met some of the loveliest people. And let me tell you that some of the loveliest people are some of the normalist people. They're people that are just everyday people, and everybody has a story to tell. Everybody's got something interesting about them if you're curious enough to listen and find out. So yeah, best job in the world.
I'm glad we can hear you well, Anna, because your video keeps freezing, but it's all good. Your voice is clear and your audio is great. Ade, did you want to add anything?
It's something to do with the radio. It's because I'm a radio person.
You're a radio person, I know. That's what
the audio's always great.
What would I add? I think everyone's pretty much summed it up, but yeah, within TV there are so many different skills that you need and that you have to learn, and I suppose presenting and reporting are within the same family, but the skills the skill sets that you need for each of them are very different. On my personal side, I started off presenting. Then I was doing a lot of live TV as a children's presenter, and then it went back to a lot of on the road presenting. I think what I would look at it, or the analogy I would make is live presenting, if you're looking at music, would be a single. And when I'm out making documentaries, I look at that as the album, because you can get more in depth and you spend more time having a look at it. The skill set of the thing about live is it is a skill set, and you can't. It's something that you have to keep doing, maintaining, because you have to work with an earpiece, you have to work with a director, you have to listen to counts, and the other thing that you have to deal with, and I've been fortunate to work on the BBC and do live stuff on the BBC and do live stuff on Channel 4, and you've got BBC where you don't have adverts, and then Channel 4 where you have adverts. And I think one of the most challenging times I had was working on the Paralympic Games. I've worked on 2 Paralympic Games and done the live TV. And the crazy thing about it on Channel 4 is, for instance, you might be presenting on a live basketball game, and there are certain rules of how many adverts they have to get in within an hour. And the game might be coming to an exciting point, and you hear the director saying in your ear, "Blooming hell, we've got to get 3 adverts in." Yeah, and you're suddenly thinking, how am I going to explain this to the audience that, yeah, Great Britain are 4 points down, you know, but sorry, we're going to have to show you an advert of some, I don't know, of some Pampers nappies, and then come back and then capture the whole emotion of everything. So live is very much a skill, and it's a big adrenaline buzz. It's the closest thing I've had to playing international basketball at the top level, because it's so, you have to be on it all the time. But presenting, when I go away and make the documentaries, that's something else altogether, and that is my real passion and my real love, because you have an opportunity to get really in depth, get under the surface of a story, and really get to know the characters that you're working with. But I love them both, because I think I'd be bored if I just did one of them.
Absolutely. I want to reassure everyone that I can see all your questions in the chat, and we are going to get to them. I'm also going to make sure that we speak to our talent a little bit about their start, how they got involved, because lots of you have questions about show reels and what you should be studying at university. Some people want top tips. So we're going to get through them all really quickly, hopefully, right, before 3 o'clock. So the next question I have is, to get to the heart of a story and tell it with intelligence and compassion isn't easy. What would you all say has been the hardest, most powerful story you've worked on, and why? And shall we start with Anna?
Well, I've worked on a lot of powerful and difficult stories. You know, I'm a reporter on the ground in London. That includes covering all kinds of things, including murders and dealing with the families of stabbing victims. You know, it can be very difficult to speak to somebody who's in an intense state of grief. But I think probably the most difficult story for me would be the Grenfell Tower fire. I mean, I don't know words can't probably completely express what that was like. It was a little bit like, I imagine, working in a war zone is. I got there on the morning. The fire was still burning in the tower. People were coming out of the building, and they were all over the road, and there were people. I remember it was, I think it was because I do live hits all the way through the programs that I work on. And I was just coming to, I think it was my second or third live hit, and I could hear my name being, I could hear the cue being read out, and they were just about to come to me. And in front of me, there were 5 ladies, and they suddenly screamed and fell to the floor and started sobbing. And it was so shocking. I ran over to them quick. I could hear my name being, I said, quickly, ladies, what's happened? And they said, our friend's whole family is in the tower. They've burned, they're dead. And they started crying. And when the presenter came to me, never in my life have I had that moment where I literally could not speak for a second. He sort of said my name, and I went, and then I just said, I'm really sorry. I have just witnessed something very, very upsetting. And I explained what happened. And I was trying to pull myself together, because I don't agree with showing emotion like that on air. And usually you have enough time to be able to process that emotion and get yourself back together. But at that time, it was very difficult to do that. And, you know, it was a long and difficult time. I was on the ground there for around 3 months continually, and then back repeatedly on a regular basis. And, you know, listening to terrible, terrible tragedy and grief is very difficult when it's all the time. And you want to help those people, and you want their stories to be told, and their stories needed to be told, and they needed to continue to be told. So yes, it was a difficult, and yeah, it was a very emotional and difficult time over a sustained period. And I'm still in touch with those families now. And that's the thing, is one of the tips I would say is your contacts are very, very important, and you need to keep on, and you need to keep your contacts close to you. And it takes out of you sometimes, but that's the way you will always know what's going on.
Thank you, Anna. And I know, Jackie, you were on the ground at Grenfell as well. I don't know if that's going to be the story that you mentioned, but I have a question here from Kate that says, when you're presenting, do you have any journalistic say in terms of how it's delivered or scripted, or does this fall entirely to a separate director, producer or researcher, or do you just read what's in front of you? So if you could include that question.
Just read what's in front of me. So easy. No, I mean, I would agree with everything that Anna has said. I covered Grenfell too, and so much was horrific about that story. But I think the idea that you die in your own home when clearly it could have been prevented, I think we understand that to be true. But on the issue of how much control you have, while staying within the balance of impartiality, which may be something, if we get time, we talk about later on. If you're presenting, for example, we would write, there's a main good evening on Channel 4 News, and if you're the lead presenter, you would write that good evening, and it would be framed by what you have learnt during the day. There are cues into other people's pieces, which will have been written by either the reporter or producer on that piece, and then we have a fantastic script writer who will just keep the day's news updated in the cues and things like that. But no, you would frame the programme at the top as a presenter, and obviously, as the others will know, as a reporter, you write your own script with the help always of usually fantastic producer, and you would take ideas and thoughts from your camera person and your VT editor, because that is also something else that we should touch on, which is in television, how important being in a team is, but how important it is to respect every person on that team. Just because you're the person who ends up in front of the screen, never forget that you are so reliant on those people getting you there, making sure that your facts are right, making sure that you don't look like you slept in a skip. I have looked like I slept in a skip on occasion, but there is a team that get you, and between you all, you get on air. And so the writing is one of the loveliest things about television. I've come through newspapers and then radio and television, and they're all very, very different aspects of the same skill set, shall we say. But yes, you would have a good deal of say here while trying to maintain impartiality and being right It's a very trite thing, but we have to try and we aim all the time is to be right, not flash. So lots of
Jackie.
madly put together thoughts there. Very poor script, actually, may I say. My little chat
Anita,
there.
what would you say your story was? And also, we've got some questions where people are asking how people started out. So also, if you could include that within your answer.
Well, it goes back to, I guess, what Jackie was saying. I mean, I started out in local radio when I was really young. I grew up in Bradford, and there was a local radio station there. And at 14, I found myself, I was just someone who couldn't sit still. And at 14, I found myself there, and they very quickly kind of let me just come and have a go. And then before you knew it, I was there every weekend and holidays and after school, and presented lots of different shows and used to record adverts for them. And that is definitely where I cut my teeth, and then ended up going to Leeds Uni to study broadcasting, which doesn't exist anymore. And the reason that course was so special is because it did a 6-month placement in industry. And for me, I mean, when we do get to talking about how to start out, I think getting your foot in the door is probably the most crucial thing. Because once you get your foot in the door, you can put yourself out there, tell people who you are, what you're about. And with people like you can see that you're keen and you're good at what you do, and keen is really, really important, right? You've got to want to be there. And honestly, it is, everyone has to start at the bottom. Don't think that, you know, you can, this idea that you get plucked and before you know it, you're kind of in a glamorous dress presenting Strictly. I'm sorry to kind of crap on everyone's dream, but that's just, I mean, it may happen to like 0.1% of people, but generally you've got to work your way up, and making a good cup of tea does help. But yeah, and backing up what everybody else has said, like, you've got to be part of the team. You are no bigger than anybody else. In fact, you've got to just kind of, you are only as good as the team around you, because the cameraman and the director and the people who edit you, they're the people who make you look great. Have something to say, have your own voice. This will come over time. This will come with experience. In documentary making and even in factual programming, you do have a director and a producer that will work together in the office, and a researcher, and they will come with a script. But on that day when you're out filming, it's really your voice. It's you who's going to be in front of the camera. It's your, it has to be your tone. I always say, you know, say things the way you would speak them, authentic to yourself, and that's how you will come across as your most natural self. And that is ultimately what presenting is about. You have to be, or certainly the sort of stuff I do, you've got to be as natural, and you've got to be easy to watch, right? People at home, you've got to make it look kind of effortless, even though you've done a load of preparation, right? It's effortless, but you have to have prepped before you get there. I'm saying so much stuff, but I mean, I've been lucky to go to some really amazing places, but also, you know, I've got to meet people in really extreme places as well. So I've been to India numerous times, and I've met some people who are probably the poorest on earth. And it is, I can't express to you how it makes you feel, right? Because you're there, you kind of step into people's worlds. It's really shocking. And then you come home and you're back into your lovely little world. But it does change your perspective on life. But it is still, again, really important to be able to speak to people and kind of get their experience to be able to make these programs. But I know I'm talking a lot, sorry. But the one program that I'm really proud of is I made a program about a refugee camp in Jordan called Zaatari. And 80,000 refugees live in this place that come from Syria. And we spent 2 weeks making a program about this remarkable place. Like, Google it, it's more like a small city. In fact, it's the 3rd largest city in Jordan. And because of the people that live there, they're really highly educated, they're middle-class people. They've turned it into this fully functioning little city with a high street, with bakeries and butcher shops and bicycle shops. And we were there embedded in this place for 2 weeks, and kind of sometimes you'd forget that you were in a refugee camp. And then we were invited to a wedding in the refugee camp, which is amazing, a Syrian wedding in a refugee camp. And there was loads of food and laughter. And the day before, I was with the bride, and she was having her henna done, and we were giggling away. It's like a proper girly little henna ceremony. And I said to her, ooh, would your wedding have been like this? And she was 18. I said, would your wedding have been like this had we been in Syria? And we were laughing and joking, and without missing a beat, she just turned to look to me and said, no, if we were in Syria, I'd have been studying to become a doctor. And that was it. Like, oh my God. I mean, I absolutely cry now when I make my programs like that. I think it's just that I used to not when I started out as a reporter. I used to, but now the types of programs I do, I find myself bawling pretty much all the time. So maybe it's just an age thing. I cry all the time. I mean, obviously you can't be too blubbering. You've got to still do the job. But yeah, I do have moments where I have to, I do shed a tear. Sorry, I went on, didn't I?
That's all right. Ade, did you have anything to add to that? And also, because I know you've done lots of children's TV, there are some questions from people like Emma Louise asking about any tips on getting into children's TV. I mean, I guess any tips into getting television, full stop, because a lot of our audience, I think, are students by some of the questions they're asking. So those initial roles, getting into runners' roles in TV, and also lots of questions from students asking about journalism degrees. Should they carry on doing a master's? Should they get straight into it? People like Victoria and Kate are asking, people like Georgina. So any tips there?
Wow. In terms of education, university, I'm probably not the best person to ask because I didn't go to uni. I went to the uni of life, as they say. But how I got into TV, I think there's no set route into getting into TV. I think a lot of people think, oh, yes, you do a journalism degree or you do a history degree or whatever. I think it's the main thing or the driving factor today is passion and is, have you got something to say? Have you got something that you care about and you're passionate about? And if you really want to get in, depending on which role you want to do in TV, I think make TV, make your own stuff right now, because there is enough technology out there for you to be making live streams, for you to be setting up your own YouTube channel. Just get into the practice of creating your own programs or creating your own formats via your live streams and constantly thinking. The great thing I've enjoyed about the lockdown with my live stream is constantly thinking, doing a producer's job, thinking, who am I going to get on to interview? Would they be a good talker? And if they are going to be a good talker, what are the talking points we want to get into? Who are my audience? Who are the people who are watching this? And you can practice all of that now on through social media without the worry or the pressure of TV. So you can cut your teeth that way, in a way that many of us were never able to do in the beginning. And in terms of how I got into TV, total luck. I was not interested in TV at all. A friend wanted, he told me about a cable TV channel who wanted to do a film about a wheelchair basketball player who played for Great Britain. I wasn't playing for Great Britain at the time, and so I said I can't do it. And then my friend said they're going to pay 250 quid, and this was in the early 90s. And when I heard they were going to pay 250 quid, I said, tell him to tell them that I'm the captain of the Great Britain squad. And they came and I told them all this stuff about how I played for Great Britain, and they filmed me, spent a day with me, and said I came across really well in camera. And one thing led to another, and that's how I got into TV. So there is no direct route. The main route is probably about your passion, and just finding avenues through your passion. But I would say now, make your stuff and then put your stuff out there, and put your stuff out to show your stuff to broadcasters, show your stuff all over the place, and you will get recognized in that way. In terms of powerful stories, I was very a couple of years ago, as Jasmine mentioned, I made a series called Africa with Ade Adepitan, and I went to Somalia, to Mogadishu, and that was incredible. Really, really powerful stories, powerful characters, but also the intensity of working in a war zone. I'd never worked in a war zone before. I did I think some of you guys will know, Anita, Jackie, and Anna would know about the what do they call it? The environment.
Hostile environment training.
Hostile environment training. I've done so many hostile environment training courses, and they're incredible. I mean, the most important thing most people take from it is the first aid, the intense first aid that you have to learn. But to go and work in a war zone where you're constantly wearing a flak jacket, you're on constant alert. Also, I think I was the first wheelchair and disabled presenter to go to Mogadishu. So the people who were working with me were kind of freaked out because they were thinking of evacuation situations. How do you get me into an armored vehicle if things all kick off? All of those things made it just an incredible experience. But when it comes down to probably powerful stories and things that have affected me, there were three, and I worked on a series called Unreported World for Channel 4. One of them was in Vietnam, and it was about children in Vietnam, or people in Vietnam, who were still suffering the effects of Agent Orange. And one of them was where I met a young guy who had been, the whole of his internal organ system had been totally damaged by Agent Orange. He was literally born without no skin, and his organs were on the outside of his body, and he died in front of us. And I still now, it still haunts me. I can still see his face, I can still see his eyes, I can still see his parents and their sorrow and their dismay, and that was just so brutally tough to deal with. Then there was in Jamaica, where I worked with a group of transgender and gay guys who had been forced to live in a storm drain in Kingston, and I think about those people every day because of the horror and the torment that they have had to go through for all of their lives, and that that sticks with me. And finally, a group of kids in Honduras. I went to a place called Chamelecon, San Pedro Sula, which is the most dangerous place in the world outside of a war zone. You know, just murders left, right, and center. And meeting the kids and hearing the kids who have dreams and hopes like kids who in the UK, but knowing that most of them, sadly, will probably be dead by now. You know, and that really haunts me, and I struggle with that a lot. So yeah, there are some tough stories. If you're going to get into this industry and you want to work in documentaries and you want to make serious, heavy type programs, be prepared for that emotional side of things. It's extremely fulfilling, but there are some very tough moments that you have to deal with.
Well, I think what our four presenters have taught us within this last few minutes is resilience is a huge deal. You know, I think there are some obvious things when it comes to being a presenter and a reporter, things like knowledge of the English language as well as other languages, media production and communication, being thorough, attention to detail, accepting criticism, obviously working well under lots of pressure, and having a desire to succeed and having brilliant communication skills. But resilience is absolutely one of them. What I wanted to ask Jackie and Anna is, you guys work in newsrooms all the time. What skills are you seeing that new young entrants into your teams and the media are already, you know, full of? What do these people that are on this call now need to skill themselves up in that are making the older generation, perhaps in media newsrooms, want to empower and employ these younger people?
I think it's really interesting. From my perspective, it's quite frightening because young people coming into our newsrooms these days can do many things, as opposed to when I went into journalism, into local papers, the main skill you had, if you know you were trying to hone, was to be able to write. That was all you needed. You needed to write, you needed to be able to go out and talk to people. Now people are coming, they can already film. Exactly as Ade says, they're making television already. They can film, they can blog, they can vlog. A lot of people have basic editing skills. None of these are prerequisites for arriving, because in good places you will get training, but just showing that you've actually started your journey, if you like, is really helpful when you come in. I would just say one thing that sounds ridiculous, but we still get people who come who've never watched the program properly. And actually, it may be boring old news, but if you've come to work here or to do an internship or to do work experience, you have to know what the program's about, because then you can build the confidence to join in the meetings and to really show that you have an interest in what you're doing. So we're seeing lots and lots of young people who are very well skilled by the time they get here. A skill that I, like an old bat, believe is underestimated is the ability to go out and talk to people. So you can have all of those skills and not actually be able to make people feel at ease. And if you're going out on stories, it's generally because people have something usually that terrible has happened, and you need to be able to make them feel that you care, that they can trust you, that you will deal with their information properly and fairly. And so I think in the sort of rush for all the sort of technical skills, in the rush to edit and to film, that in news, in my game, that is also a skill that you need to work on. And it's not about being cocky or really confident, because you can be painfully shy and you can still do this job. But so that's the one thing that I think sometimes oddly is lacking. And I realise, I'm looking at myself now thinking you do look and sound like an old bat.
No, I would agree with you completely, Jackie. If you can't talk to somebody, then that is the essential skill of a presenter. You have to be able to make people feel comfortable, at ease. You've got to get their trust, and also you've got to be interested in them.
Yeah,
not
absolutely.
about you.
That question.
It's not about you. I mean, presenting is not like, hey, it's one eyebrow up. No, read a list of questions. It's you've got to want to listen to this person and extract that information from them, because you're genuinely invested in what they have to say.
Yeah, I think there was there's a real subtlety of being able to immerse yourself in a story and then take yourself out of a story. And sometimes you have to be able to dip in and out in that place in terms of immersing, so you get that connection with the person that you're speaking to and they trust you, but then also be able to come out of it in order to direct and editorially take the story in the direction that you want to. And that's a real subtle thing that you have to be able to do in really crazy situations with lots of distractions going around you. You have to have that pinpoint laser focus. And I think what Jackie, you were saying there as well, is boils down, I think, ultimately to communication. We have to be able to communicate with people from all different walks of life. All different walks of life, you know, from people who live in Grimsby and Hull to people who live in Buckingham Palace or in Mogadishu and Somalia. And the way to do that, I think, is to drill down into the story. Once you drill down into the story, you can find a common place where you can take it to, and a place for you to communicate. Sorry, I butted in there, but I wanted to do it before I forgot.
No, not at all. I was just going to say that a lot of people that come into our industry now are fantastically skilled, like you were saying, in editing and videoing themselves and getting themselves on screen. But I also think that some people don't necessarily recognize a story when they see it. And it's as true for some of the people that we work with, actually, as it is to young people coming in. But I wanted to say that stories are all around us, that by just talking to people that live near you, or your friends or your neighbors, there are stories there that you will hear, and the ability is to be able to spot them and work out how to turn that into a really good news story, or can that person be a case study in illustrating a wider issue that you're looking at the moment. So how I got myself actually into broadcasting was I did a degree in Italian and Arabic, And then I realised I probably couldn't get into journalism if I didn't do a postgrad. So I was doing a postgrad in journalism at City University. And then something happened to me that I thought was a fantastic story. So what happened was, my husband is Tunisian. We'd been living in Italy before that. He came in to England with a Tunisian passport. And what happened then, I don't know if it's the same now, is you get a stamp on your passport for a year. And then 11 months into that year's visit, you can send your passport off to get an indefinite leave to remain stamp in it. And so we'd done that. And then I got the chance to go to this fantastic journalism conference in Italy, but my passport was away with the Immigration and Nationality Directorate. So I rang up and said, yeah, I need my passport back. And they said, oh, yeah, sorry about that. We haven't got it at the moment. Can you ring back next week? So I kept ringing back. And then one woman told me that she'd lost my passport and my husband's. And then she said to me, well, it's not just yours and your husband's, I'm afraid. We've lost 10,000 of them. So I said to her, what? So she said, yeah, we've lost 10,000. We've been moving buildings and we've basically lost all these passports. So I said to her, okay, I'm a journalist, which I wasn't, by the way. I was still a student. I'm a journalist and I want you to be my mole. I actually said that to her. So she said, she went quiet for a minute and then she went, okay. So basically this thing then started. I thought, how am I going to pitch this story? This is a fantastic story. How am I going to pitch this? I'm not a journalist yet, but I know this is a great story. So I went to, I think I went to 5 Live, GLR as it was then, which is now where I work, BBC Radio London. They sort of turned me down or said, yeah, give me the story, but we're not interested. And then I went to You and Yours on Radio 4, and they said, right, yeah, great story, brilliant. We'll give you 50 quid, just give us the contacts. So I said to them, no, I want to do the story. So they said, oh, well, sorry, you can't. Well, you're an unknown voice. And yeah. So I said, okay, fine. Put the phone down. And they rang me back about 10 minutes later and they went, okay, look, this is what we'll do. You can come and work for 3 days on it, but you can't do the interview. So I thought, well, okay, fine. I can live with that. So I went in, and then after the first day, they said, look, we think you can do the interviews, so why don't you go and do it? And then I actually got my passport back about 2 days before I was due to go to the journalism conference, and the piece aired as their top story on the Friday that I was in at the conference. So what I wanted to say was that, you can have a fantastic story and it can be your story and you can push it, find the right outlet for it, and you can get it on. Go for it, believe in what you have and believe it's a good story and believe in your ability to actually do that story yourself.
There are lots of questions in the chat about actually making the jump from being perhaps unknowns or runners or interns or researchers into in front of the camera, which is of course what all 4 of you do. I mean, you have dream jobs traveling the world, you present in the biggest cities, you present here as well, all over the nations and regions in the UK. What would you say are good top tips for taking in, retaining and delivering huge reams of information, which all of you do? You need to use long scripts, you have to have lists of questions in your head and confidently deliver your words on air. So are there any top tips from you guys to the young people watching now that they can start actually practicing and getting involved in?
I would just say really quickly, sorry, as Anita touched on it earlier on, and this is really brief, it's just you have to do your homework. And that homework, you've got as long to do it, as the situation arises. It may be all night, a day, it may be an evening, it may be an hour, but you work as methodically as possible and think, what do I need to know? I think that's really critical, focusing in on what you need to know for that interview, rather than thinking I need to know everything for the whole of the next 3 days. If you've got an hour before an interview, you think about that interview. What do we need out of that interview? What information do I need to know before I go into it? How am I write my questions down, even though I won't necessarily refer to them all the time. The writing down helps me think, okay, this is what I'm asking. Does that make logical sense? Does that draw a straight line in this interview? So in short, because I don't want to talk too long, I think you have to do your homework. The retaining information in terms of pieces to camera, that is something you get by practicing. Lives are very, very nervous live performer. I write what I want to say down, To a certain extent, I will learn quite a bit of it, but you need to be able to box and cox. I know other people don't learn anything, they write bullet points. You find your best way of doing it.
Chris Mason, for BBC political correspondent, taught me a great way. He said, look, you know, you've got reams and reams of information there. You don't need to give all those reams of information out on air. Pick the 3 main things that you think are important and remember those 3 main things and talk about those. And I think it's a good way, really, because I work with Eddie Nestor, who is, he likes to call himself a facts and figures person. And Chris Mason told me, I hope Eddie Nestor's not listening, he said, yeah, you can make him think that you've got lots of facts and figures. He said, just keep saying the same 3 things more than once.
Absolutely. Can I just reassure you all, I am seeing all your questions and I don't have to run off at the end, so I'm happy to stay for a bit longer because I can see we've got about 7 minutes left. So I will definitely come back to your question, Sam Downey. I do see it. So any other top tips from you guys about actually retaining long bits of information? Jackie's talked about doing her homework. Anita?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everything that everyone said. Do your homework before you get there. You can never just wing it. I mean, seriously, I think even the most experienced presenters, okay, maybe might just be able to get away with it every now and again, but you really need to know your stuff. And it's brain training. Everybody works in their own way. All of this comes with practice. It comes with learning your skill, honing your skills. It comes over time. Even the confidence you get in front of the camera. You know, you have to have a certain natural ability, I think. If you want to be a presenter, there are some people who are just better at it from the off than others, but you can learn this skill in terms of learning pieces to camera. Everyone does it in their own way. Like you'll often find me walking around the countryside saying lines over and over again in my head for Country File. Or if I'm doing a live, I have bullet points. I see things visually. I kind of do mind mapping to remember where I'm going to go next. And I think that's really good advice from Anna, 3 bits of information. You've got to be able to distill information and give it to the public in a way that they'll understand, like take quite complex bits of information, which is what Jackie and Anna do, you know, complex bits of information, understand it and then deliver it to the public so that we understand what the heck's going on. And that takes a bit of work, but you can learn, you can do it. You can all do it. It's just, you just got to put the work in.
I think for myself.
Oh, go on. Sorry, Ade, go ahead.
No, just very quickly, I was just going to say, know your story. So know the story inside out. I tend to try and get away from the script quite quickly, and just understand that how the story works, the whole mechanics, what's about it, and also. I don't know if it's me personally, but I'm just a fan of TV and broadcast stuff. So I watch lots and lots and lots of TV, all different types, from current affairs to documentaries to comedy, and to podcasts. I watch it in all, to listen and consume it in all different formats. And I think it gives me an idea of the mechanics and how stories should work and what people want. And then finally, the other thing I always try and do when I'm asking questions is I think, what would I want to know if I was watching this program at home? If I was sitting in my house and I've got and I was watching it and you've got this important person, what are the things that I would like to find out? And that usually informs me in the direction that I should go.
Thank you, Ade. There are a lot of questions from people who are out in the nations and regions across the country. So I just wanted to ask you guys, what are you seeing when it comes to opportunities for new entrants for the nations and regions? Jackie, I know that there's been some Channel 4 outreach. We've got Leeds and Bristol and different places. What are your thoughts? As
I mean, if I was being brutally honest, I still think there's not enough. I think it's still quite difficult for people outside of London to come for all sorts of reasons, particularly people who can't afford to be put up in, you know, find themselves somewhere to live in London. So I think that remains an issue. We are looking at it, but I think it's one of many issues. And I know we don't have time to talk about this, which is a shame, about diversity, because I don't know what our audience is like today, but I honestly would say it has never been more important. there has never been a better time for us as an industry to really take a good hard look at ourselves and be honest about how it's not always a pretty picture on diversity in all its forms. And I don't want to sound too woke, but it has mattered to me my whole working life, and it has never mattered more, I'm afraid. And I think it's important. This made me smile the other day. My colleague and friend Jordan, who is the sports reporter at our place, does some other great reports as well, read the Noon Bulletin the other day. He's black with his locks, and 2 minutes after the Noon Bulletin, and very often we always think there's nobody out there, I hope the bosses aren't listening, that because it's the little Noon Bulletin, but Jordan, and I got a screenshot taken off a youth worker that I know and have done some pieces with. He could not be more delighted to see Jordan on television reading the Noon Bulletin, and that's why it matters.
Of course. And I do have some questions on diversity. And then, by the way, I don't have to run off, so we will ask them. I know Anna and Jackie, I think you need to run off. Anita and Ade, are you happy to stay for a few extra minutes?
I've got about 5 minutes, but I'm going to just slip off and get my charger for my phone before it dies. So if I disappear, it doesn't mean I'm not.
Go ahead.
I've got about 5 minutes, but I just want to, just because we brought up diversity, and I think it's really important to talk about it, especially with everything that's going on right now. And Ade's zoomed off, but I can tell you that it's taken me and Ade a long time to get to where we are, right? It has not been an overnight success, and it has been hard work to make sure that we are constantly kind of you've got to put yourself out there. I would say tenacity, like don't give up to all of you out there who are not middle class and white. Just keep going, keep battling. Be a bit cheeky. And also, and this is like what I've learned, I think what Jackie's just said, there's never been a better time, right? Because this industry needs to diversify, the conversations are happening. And also we need to understand and be reflective of the world that we live in and what Britain is right now. So be confident, right? If you don't fit the kind of what you think people in TV are, don't worry about it. And don't do what I spent a long time doing, which is feeling really grateful for the opportunity and kind of not being myself. I found myself going into meetings, having to be something I'm not, and that in turn doesn't mean you're not being yourself. Go in there, be confident and proud of who you are, and know that, you know, you don't have to change, right? Just that's kind of the advice I want to give young kids coming through now from my own experience. And there are people now who, you know, are looking out for good talent, and yeah, we need you. So just keep going.
And I'm sorry to add in again, because I know I've spoken on this already, but Anita is absolutely right. It is not about, it cannot be a tick box exercise, which of course it has been for a couple of decades probably. It matters so that we reflect the world we're in. Yeah. I feel really strongly about it in news, and I think in other programs too. We're supposed to be reflective of the world outside, and I think for too long, on loads of fronts, gender, class, race, disability, we have not been. And yes, some strides are made, but very often you'll see people don't rise as they should. Too often it's done where people, for whatever reason, are brought in at the bottom, and nothing is done to enable people who might not fit in, and I use that phrase very, very carefully, but to enable the workplace to do more for them, not the other way around. And so I think there's so much that we can do on this, and I think it's a whole other conversation. But
absolutely, we'll have to have a part two. Anna, I know you have a live. Do you have to run?
I have a live at 3:05.
Okay, not to worry. I know that Ade, you wanted to add something to that, because I remember once years ago when me and you were chatting, you told me that on your Africa series, you personally had to pitch to bring in some crew that were diverse. Are you happy to talk about that?
Yeah, I think, first of all, Jackie, I'd just like to say big up to Jordan. That's one of my former basketball teammates, actually. So I'm really happy that he was reading the noon news. So big up Jordan. But I think Anita said it as well. If you feel like you don't fit in and you're not the the face that you see on TV, but you have a passion for it, keep banging on that door. Keep banging on that door. Don't hold back. You have to kick down and scream that door down. Yeah, in terms of the Africa series, it's something that I've been passionate about, and I've been pitching for almost 2 decades. And the responses I got were, I mean, not directly, but what I could get from people was Africa doesn't rate. People are afraid to watch Africa because it's only going to be about, or a series about the continent of Africa, because it's going to be about poverty, it's going to be about corruption and all this negative stuff. And I had to just keep the faith and keep pushing it. And I knew that I could present it in a certain way that would make it important, and that would make it a series that people from all different backgrounds would watch. And I'm really glad that I stuck to it, because I think it proved that point. Finally, sorry, someone's just knocked on my door. It's all going crazy here. I'm supposed to be filming in about 10 minutes, so this will probably be my last.
My microphone ready. I know, guys, but I really literally got to go out that door now.
Go.
Listen, I thank you all so much. Yeah. If you have to run off. I'll be staying, but everyone else.
This is live radio, everyone.
Oh, it's live radio. Go, Anna, go. I mean, look, what an absolute hour of gold nugget knowledge we've had dropped by our 4 panelists. Thank you so much, those of you who have to go. Do feel free to pop off. I hope that the rest of you have gained an insight into the life of a TV presenter and a reporter. You know, you get to learn for a living, and reporting is a career for you. If you're curious, you get to work in a challenging environment. Every day is different. It's exciting. You work amongst informed, passionate people. You always feel a strong sense of achievement. I know I do. We get to travel lots. We meet people. We become experts in our communities. And I think it's the best job in the world. And I hope that you all agree. And you know, thank you so much, those of you who do have to run off. Thanks for joining us for this RTS Futures session. Do sign up to the RTS site's website for more exciting sessions that enable you guys to enter the TV industry. And I hope that we'll all cross paths with you again out there in the future. And if you do have to run off, stay safe and well out there, and have a great week.
Thanks very much for asking. Thanks for asking, and thanks for listening. Lovely to see you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Jasmine. And
yes, you guys. Love you. Thank you for joining us. I'm not leaving you guys, so feel free to ask questions if you have any. I saw some in there about agents and managers. And the thing that I would say about that is, I don't think you need an agent and manager until you actually get your foot in the door, because agents and managers tend to only want to take in people that have already done something or are starting in their career. And genuinely, you don't need someone to push you. We live in an era where the internet is your biggest marketing tool. And someone asked a question and said, how do you find out what your speciality is? And what I would say about that is, all of us know what we feel passionate about. Who are we? What are we connected to? You know, one thing I often do with new young trainees at the Media Trust is a branding exercise called I Am My Brand. And in the middle of the paper, I mean, I'll talk through it with you. Maybe the RTS will let me run a session on it one day. But if you just get a big sheet of paper, pop your name in the middle, and it's like a spider chart, right? And so outside the spider chart, you talk about where you grew up, what your background is historically, culturally, what your favorite subjects at school were, what you're good at, what do your friends say about you? If I said to you, what's your personality type? Are you chatty? Are you nosy? Are you curious? What are you into? And then think about all the things that you've debated or had arguments about recently with your peer groups and friends. So for example, things that I'm always arguing about are diversity in the media, diversity in workplaces. I'm always talking about opportunities for young people and the youth voice. I often talk about women's rights. I worked at MTV for nearly 2 decades, so I'm all about music and hip hop culture and black music. So all of those things go around my chart in my mind map, and then I start cross-referencing things. So as a Persian culturally background person, I talk about traveling and maybe black music in other countries, or perhaps diversity in theatre and ballet because I trained in that. And so you can start cross-referencing things on your own chart to see what your specialist areas might be. I hope that makes sense. I know Kira, I'm not sure how you pronounce your name, whether it's Ciara or Kira, you've asked if there's enough representation of people who have learning disabilities in the media. It depends on what your learning disability is, I would say. I know lots of people and fellow presenters who have got learning disabilities, whether that's dyslexia or dyspraxia and lots of other things, but they will often talk about it. And there's lots of blogs that they've done about how to get through that. So I wonder if you're following any of those accounts. Which other questions can I see up here? Sam, where's yours? Sam, you said, my background from going from a runner to a presenter to a director. So years ago in the 90s, yes, I really am that old. I know I don't look it, but no, I am. In the 90s, I applied for work experience at lots and lots of different TV companies, mainstream and independent TV companies. And I wrote them letters. I asked for work experience. The Big Breakfast at the time, which was on Channel 4, ended up making a show called The Word, which was also on Channel 4. And I ended up doing work experience there. And I made sure that I was just the go-to person for anything that those TV production staff needed, whether it was cups of tea and their dry cleaning picked up, or babysitting for the presenters whilst, you know, they were on air, or whatever it was. I was the go-to girl. I mean, I had to, one day, I was responsible for getting an elephant onto the front lawn of the Big Breakfast show, and I did it from Regent's Park Zoo, the London Zoo. So it's about making sure that, you know, you are the go-to person. Everything is a yes, with a smile. Someone said to me once, you're always consistently delightful. And I thought, really? Because in my head, sometimes I'd be asked to do jobs that I absolutely hated, but I had a smile on my face while I was doing them. So when that company was going to find a presenter for their youth culture show, I was asked to audition for it. I never wanted to be a presenter. I was quite content working in production, but then they tricked me into doing the audition by saying that someone had dropped out and could I fill in, because at university I did theatre studies, communications and drama. I went in, I filled in, I genuinely thought I was just filling in, and then about 3 weeks later I got a memo from the bosses saying, you are now the new presenter of The Word, you need to leave the building, get yourself a solicitor and an agent and all this stuff. So sometimes it's just about being in the right place, being great at what you do, finding your specialist area, and you know, really running with it. And now that we've got the internet, there's no excuse for you not to be writing blogs, making vlogs, sending it. You know, one of my top tips is, and I always say this, and I hope there are no TV people watching because it's crass, but it's true. TV people and everyone in the media are quite egotistical and narcissistic, and if you can say anything flattering about them or something that they've worked on, especially something that they've worked on for TV, if you tweet someone and say, love that program that you made, love this, love that, if you become consistently in conversation with your networking with all these people, then when you say, could we grab a quick coffee, even if it's a cup of tea over Zoom, I'd love to speak to you and pick your brains, they will do it because you've already built up some good faith and good energy with them. So I would always look at your favorite programs and shows, look at the TV company at the end who makes it, look at the directors and the exec producers, and talk to them. Most of them are on Twitter. Twitter is where the media world lives. Who else has got a question? I am my brand makes a lot of sense. There you go. No worries, Tidgley. Loving that. We're gonna probably wrap up unless I see some new questions. Is there anything else that anyone would like to know, or should I wrap up now? Where are we? Kira, I don't know if I answered your question well enough. I know that you talked about disability and media representation, but the thing I will say is all broadcasters and shows now have to have a good breadth of representation when it comes to diverse groups and communities. So if you've got some content that is you talking on screen, or, you know, debating about anything, send it with your Twitter link to those different shows. I often have to put forward and suggest new talent for different shows, and they do look at these things. So definitely, if you've got content, send it to them. Are there any questions? Oh, hold on, another couple of, question about motorsports. I didn't see that. Where's that? The challenges for general entertainment presenter as opposed to a specialist. I think, you know, the things about general entertainment is you have to be a master of many different fields. So my specialist area was always music. And at MTV, I had to know about all the music genres that I worked with, but then I also needed to know a little bit about film and fashion and celebrity because they were the surrounding areas. So I would say have your absolute nugget of your specialist skill set, but definitely one of the mistakes I made was I was never into film, and I'm still not that bothered about film. And I know I've lost a lot of great jobs on MTV red carpets for the VMAs because of that. So make sure you don't close your mind to anything. If you want to be an entertainment reporter, you really have to know about everything. What's trending? You know, do you know about Versus music plus the no signal radio stations? Because if you want to be an entertainment reporter, these are the things that are trending currently every night. What else can I see? I'm probably going to wrap up in about 2 minutes. How do we take the next step into producing when you're already in the industry as a journalist? And that's from Jess Dawson. It's really hard when we can't speak face to face. Jess, I wonder if you would follow me on Twitter. On Twitter, I am just my full name, Jasmine Dotiwala. If you are already a journalist in the industry and you want to swap across to television, it's difficult unless you've got some skills talking to camera. I would say start as a pundit. TV people are always looking for fresh faces and fresh voices, especially if you're out in the nations and regions, because we definitely don't have enough of those. Have you got something that you're already talking about? Anyone can make up a YouTube channel. It's free, or a blog or a WordPress site where you've got any of your written pieces. Sometimes I've been in the newsroom and editors have read a piece that someone's written with me, and we've said, do you think that they can speak about this? And we've just picked up the phone to have a quick chat with them. And because they're on speakerphone, my editor and I will be thumbs upping to each other or thumbs downing, depending on whether they can speak well. So, you know, that's a tip for that. I'm a TV researcher, development researcher. I always wanted to be a presenter, background and performing. Georgina, I would say the one thing that you are already doing right, which is brilliant, is you're already in television as a researcher and a development researcher. I would do more. Can you do anything in your own time? Can you put up anything on blogs and vlogs? Can you show the team that you work with that you can do this? And can you make it not look like, it's a really weird thing, because I mean, I'm glad that this audience here are people who want to be presenters and reporters, but it is a really intense fact that people in television are often put off by people who say, I want to be a presenter. Because when you say I want to be a presenter, what it usually reads as to people in TV is, I want to be famous, I want to be on telly, I want to, you know, have people look at me. And so you've got to convince them that that's not the reason you want to be on telly and be a presenter. And you do that by being an expert in your specialist area. Can you speak about it? Can you tweet about it? We get so many people on air on TV who have just been passionate tweeters. And because they've been passionately tweeting and jumping on all the different hashtags, whether your specialist area is disability, the nations and regions, it might be the environment, it might be Black Lives Matter, whatever it is, get involved in those tweets and hashtags. There are so many hashtags online on Twitter for journo request. I don't know if you've seen it. It's journalists requesting things. So if you look at the hashtag journo request, often they're looking for people to speak about certain things. Check that regularly too. I hope that's all made sense. I'm really, really sorry. James Hancock, being from Grimsby should absolutely be part of your brand, because we haven't got enough voices in the nations and regions. We're always looking for them. So if you can get, you know, whatever your favorite news is, which news do you think reflects your personality, or documentaries? You know, when I think about my own personality, I'm a little bit risque, confrontational. I love a good debate and challenge. Channel 4 News is my natural home. Which is your natural home when you think about your personality? So think about that. And it's really weird now because I can't see anyone and I'm not talking to myself in my living room. So once again, thank you all so much for joining us. I'd be so happy to do another future session with you. I often think an hour is way too short, especially if you've got 4 or 5 people speaking. I'm happy to do a solo one too, if anyone found any of this helpful. I would say get your network started. If you're not on Twitter, get on Twitter. I would say start following people that you naturally gravitate to. Find your different media tribes on Twitter. So as I said, all the things that I'm into, I follow people on Twitter who are also into those things so that I know what the movements and the conversations are. I stay topical about things like that. The RTS, when it's real life and we're not in lockdown, we have regular monthly sessions and panels. Often, even if you can't be there in person, you can maybe watch it live on the stream. There are so many live streams that the RTS are doing at the moment. Make sure you look at all of them. I find all of them really fascinating. I'm still learning. What are my top 3 tips in getting a network started? So I always say my top 3 tips are: you are the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. So think about the people that you're spending time with or you're inputting content from online. If they are negative and draining and exhausting and angry, that's what you will be. If they are winning and succeeding and positive and full of light, then you will too be that. I often also say if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. And that basically means just surround yourself with people that are doing great things, whether that's online or in real life. Be surrounded by winners. And, you know, good luck to all of you. The fact that you've spent this hour and a half with us is a brilliant, brilliant thing. And I just wish you well. And I hope that, you know, you really do cross our paths in the real world once we're back to normal again. So thank you all, everyone. It's been amazing speaking to you. I don't know where you are, but yeah, good luck in your TV careers.